Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. The long-awaited solar eclipse is happening today. The moon will cast its shadow across the U.S. from Texas all the way through Maine. Stay tuned for our live on-the-ground coverage.
Former President Trump's campaign says it raised $50 million at an event over the weekend. We have more on the private Florida fundraiser and President Biden's reaction.
Israel withdraws a large portion of its troops from Gaza as the war reaches 6 months, but the fighting is far from over. Officials say an assault on the southern Rafah region is imminent.
A senior Biden administration official says an attack by Iran is inevitable. NTD speaks with a former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. for analysis.
A Brazilian judge opens an inquiry into Elon Musk after the billionaire said he would restore social media accounts that had been blocked in the country, what Musk describes as a free speech crackdown in Brazil.
Boeing again comes under scrutiny as yet another plane experiences a frightening incident. What went wrong and a new FAA investigation.
President Biden's re-election campaign raises over $187 million in the first quarter 2024, almost double what it took in during the previous quarter. A closer look at his fundraising numbers with the host of Business Matters.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Welcome. Today is Monday, April 8th.
Yes, and if those are the real figures, Trump set the record for the biggest fundraiser in a single event.
Right, but as you mentioned, if those are the real figures, we still need to wait a couple of months until those campaign finance reports actually come out, so it hasn't been verified yet. Nonetheless, today's top news, former President Trump's campaign says it raised over $50 million at a fundraiser in Florida over the weekend. That almost doubles what the Biden campaign recently said it raised at a high-profile event in New York City.
Some of the GOP's biggest donors rallied behind Trump during a private dinner at billionaire John Paulson's home. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the fundraiser.
Former President Trump, outside a private fundraiser Saturday, predicted a spectacular evening and said people just want change.
Your country is really doing poorly. We're a laughing stock all over the world, and we're going to get that change very quickly.
The closed-door dinner at the home of billionaire investor John Paulson hosted around 120 high-profile guests, including hedge fund billionaire Robert Mercer, energy executive Harold Hamm, and casino mogul Steve Wynn.
People, they wanted to contribute to a cause of making America great again, and that's what's happened. We're going to make America great again.
A Trump campaign official said Trump spoke for 45 minutes about goals for a second term, including securing the border, reducing inflation, unleashing energy production, and extending 2017 tax cuts. The official said Trump also talked about ending Biden's EV mandates, protecting Israel, and avoiding global war. Trump's surrogates speaking included Vivek Ramaswamy, along with Senators Doug Burgum and Tim Scott. Trump asked guests to donate up to $800,000 to his campaign. The Palm Beach fundraiser collected money for the Trump 47 Committee, a joint fundraising operation that includes Trump's campaign, the RNC, and state party committees. It also directed funds to the Save America PAC that spent over $50 million on Trump's legal fees since the start of the year. President Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders reacted on X, saying they plan to ask Trump's, quote, good buddies to pay their fair share.
This is his economic plan? That's what he wants to do? Cutting taxes for his friends? Cutting Social Security for you? That makes me mad as hell, quite frankly.
The hypocrisy is just outrageous.
Campaign figures show Biden's campaign had over $190 million cash to start the month, double what Trump had on hand. Former First Lady Melania Trump is set to appear at a fundraiser for the Log Cabin Republicans later this month. Trump is holding another high-profile fundraiser in Atlanta, Georgia on Wednesday. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Trump is set to outline his policy on abortion today. He stated on Truth Social it would include exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother.
The GOP's presumptive nominee did not elaborate further. He argued that a common sense approach is needed for Republicans to win in November. And more on politics, Representative Lauren Boebert changing districts from Colorado's 3rd to the 4th. Here to tell us the impact and the reason for this is Mike Leon, our contributor and the Director of Policy and Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation and the host of the Can We Please Talk news commentary podcast. Great to have you here this morning, Mike. Please explain how this ballot process works that resulted in Representative Boebert clinching the top spot on the Republican primary ballot in June.
Hey, Kevin, good to see you first and foremost. Good morning, as always. So this is a pretty weird process for people that may not be following this, but June 25th is going to be a big day in Colorado. So the GOP representative of the 4th District East in Colorado there was Ken Buck. Ken Buck decided to retire early on. So Lauren Boebert decided to switch districts. She represents the 3rd District out on the west side of Colorado. She's switching over to the east side now and running in this June 25th GOP primary that's happening. But it's a twofold primary because the first part is going to be a special election that's happening for somebody to fill Ken Buck's seat just until the November general election. So Lauren Boebert right now gained 41% of the delegate vote there. It's like a three-tier process that you can go through in Colorado to either gain signatures or gain over 30% of the delegate vote. She was able to get 41%, so she's going to appear first on that primary ballot vote. And there's still other GOP candidates that are going to be with her on that June 25th ballot to be able to go up against the Democratic challenger in November. So twofold process, first to fill the seat until the November election, and then obviously to fill the 2-term elections come January.
Good to know. And some of her opponents, like Ms. Flora, was saying that she should run in the district in which she lives. But Boebert has said that she's already moved to the 4th District here. There are thin majorities in the House and Senate right now. So how important is this race that Boebert's in?
Well, I mean, it's huge. But, I mean, the big thing for Republicans, you shouldn't as much worry about the 4th District. This is a plus 20 district. I mean, Ken Buck won this district by, 61% of the vote out there. So this is a pretty safe district for Republicans, at least in the state of Colorado at large. But back to your point, Kevin, I mean, look, every House seat is up in 2024, right, folks? That's how it works every 2 years. So this is going to be a huge election, and right now the House majority for Republicans, at least from a voting perspective, is down to about 1 because of how many folks have decided to retire early. I think a couple weeks ago, you and I were talking about the Wisconsin Representative Mike Gallagher, who was leaving early as well, come April 19th. So it's not a big majority for them, and they can't afford to lose any more seats, and they need to win some seats come November if they want to stay in power starting in January.
And Representative Boebert has taken a pretty hard line on immigration, and her opponents, they align with her on that. They just say that she probably won't be able to beat a Democrat in the general election. A couple seconds here, Mike. What will happen to Colorado's 3rd District that Boebert represents now?
So there's going to be the election process coming in November. If you recall, folks, she won that district only by about 547 votes. I think it was like the closest race that happened. And Democrats are pumping a lot of money into the 3rd District. Adam Frisch, who was the candidate who ran against her, they're pumping in, but he's got about $5 million in cash. His campaign reported a few months ago. So the Democrats are spending a lot of time in that district. There's going to be the election that's going to be happening, obviously, in November for her seat. So that's going to be one to watch to see if that seat flips blue or remains red, depending upon who the candidate will be on the Republican side.
Excellent. Mike Leon, our contributor and Director of Policy and Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warned the Chinese regime today the U.S. will not accept new industries being wiped out by Chinese imports.
Yellen just finished 4 days of meetings in China, urging Beijing to cut manufacturing over capacity.
Yellen says China has ramped up production capacity far beyond the domestic demand.
She says cheap Chinese exports threaten jobs in the U.S., comparing it to low-cost, the Chinese steel flooding the global market in the past. She says U.S. concerns are shared by European allies, along with countries like Japan, Mexico, and the Philippines.
Yellen also says she made it clear that President Biden will not accept a reality like that again. Treasury officials said Yellen did not threaten tariffs or other specific measures against Chinese imports.
The Treasury Secretary says she had difficult conversations about national security. This included concerns of Chinese companies supporting Russia in Ukraine. Here's Yellen over the weekend.
China has emphasized that it is their policy not to provide Russia with military support, that neither of us want this to be an issue in our bilateral relationship.
6 months to the day that the terrorist group Hamas launched a deadly attack on Israel. The Israeli government said they were withdrawing some of their troops from Gaza.
As the war enters a new phase, we take a look at events on the ground.
After months of fighting, Israel's military said Sunday it's pulling forces from the city of Khan Yunis. The IDF says its 98th Division concluded its mission and was leaving Gaza to recuperate and prepare for future operations. Israel confirmed one division will remain in Gaza. The withdrawal comes days after an Israeli strike killed 7 aid workers, and President Biden told his Israeli counterpart that future U.S. support was tied to Israel taking steps to reduce civilian harm. On Sunday, Palestinian residents who fled the city returned to see what was left of their homes.
We came to see what happened to the house, but we didn't find any houses in the first place. It's just rubble. You can't live here. Animals can't live here. So how is a person supposed to? The destruction is unreal.
Before pulling out, the IDF said commando units raided and searched over 100 locations in the Al Amal neighborhood of Khan Yunis. The military said it found a long tunnel and eliminated terrorists. Meanwhile, Israel confirmed it was sending a delegation to Egypt to discuss the future of the war. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu stating he would not cave to international pressure.
I made it clear to the international community there will be no ceasefire without the return of hostages. It just won't happen.
Israel says around 130 hostages are still held in Gaza. The army says they will have to enter the Rafah area along the border with Egypt to eliminate Hamas once and for all. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant confirmed that a Rafah mission is in the pipeline. Over 1 million people are currently sheltering in Rafah. Foreign powers have raised concerns about the humanitarian consequences of an attack there. Israel says it will evacuate civilians before launching an incursion. On another front, Israeli military says it's preparing to move from defense to attack on the border with Lebanon. The IDF and Lebanese terrorist group Hezbollah have been exchanging fire since the start of the Israel-Hamas war, with casualties reported on both sides. Israel said commanders of regular and reserve units are now ready to be deployed within just a few hours. The IDF gave a briefing Sunday on what has happened so far in 6 months of war. It says over 600 Israeli soldiers have been killed, while the IDF has struck over 32,000 terrorist targets. The IDF also said they facilitated the entry of more than 20,000 aid trucks into Gaza.
The United States is preparing for a significant Iranian attack on U.S. or Israeli assets in the region as soon as this week. That's according to an unnamed senior official with the Biden administration. The threat comes after an Israeli strike in Syria killed Iranian commanders last week. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that and an exclusive interview by America's Hope host, Kelly Wright, who sat down with former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren.
A senior Biden administration official says they believe an attack by Iran is inevitable. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said Sunday the U.S. is prepared to respond swiftly if necessary against any attacks by Iran or its proxies.
I know the president and his team are working hard to prevent escalation and are prepared to defend any attack and respond swiftly if necessary.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Iran has been acting against Israel for years and they will act accordingly.
We will know how to defend ourselves and we will act according to the simple principle of whoever harms us or plans to harm us, we will harm them.
Former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren, says Israel is facing multiple potentially existential threats. One such threat, according to Oren, is Hezbollah in the north, backed by Iran, which he says has between 150 and 170,000 rockets.
They're longer range, they're very, very accurate. And the Israeli estimate for the rocket fire daily that we would be receiving from Hezbollah is between 2,000 and 6,000 rockets a day, which is just really, truly inconceivable. And by the way, we could be sitting here, I don't want to get you scared. It could happen right now.
Other threats, he says, include Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria, the Houthi terrorists in Yemen, and Iran itself. The former ambassador says the truth of the October 7th attack and Israel's right to exist are being taken away from it.
People don't even remember the barbarism, the atrocities of October 7th. Even if you show them the films, they'll say, oh, it was done by artificial intelligence, or the reports of mass rapes that were committed against Israeli women and young women on October 7th by Hamas terrorists. Oh, it's all denied. It's all made up. It's fabricated.
Oren warns against underestimating what is at stake in Israel's war against Hamas.
Evil is a force in the world that, whether you call it Satan, the devil, it doesn't matter. Evil exists in the world. And we saw it in full display on October 7th, because that was truly an evil. And we are up against that evil. And I'll put a finer point on it. If we don't succeed in this war, if we do not defeat that evil, other countries and other societies are next.
The former ambassador says growing up in America, he lived in a strongly working-class neighborhood where he regularly got beat up for being the only Jewish kid. His father was a World War II soldier who participated in the liberation of a concentration camp.
And every time I come home with a bloody nose or black eye for being called Dirty Jew, my father would open up an album of the pictures they had and show me the piles of bodies. And I still carry these pictures in my cell phone. And my father would say, you see that, son? You see that? That's why we need a strong Jewish state.
The war between Israel and Hamas has now reached the 6-month mark. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Coming up 6 months into the war in Gaza, crowds gathered in New York City and Washington, D.C. yesterday, demanding the release of hostages still held in Gaza.
Attack drones damage a nuclear power plant in Ukraine, killing one. An international agency warns of the risks, calling for an end to reckless attacks.
The office of Senator Bernie Sanders in Vermont catches fire. Authorities make an arrest after suspecting arson. What we know about the alleged attack.
And Boeing under scrutiny again as yet another plane experiences a frightening incident. What went wrong, and a new FAA investigation after the break.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。所以，我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
According to Marx, everything must be seen through the lens of oppressor and oppressed. our property rights have continued to get weaker. The threat of these takings is no longer just for public use, but also for better use. This means that the government can't force the exchange of property from one private citizen to another private citizen. This is nowhere near the Founding Fathers' intentions. We now have a record share of Americans that have never been married, I being one of them. In fact, the median age of a first marriage has never been higher. Now you may be thinking this is only affecting single adults. Well, not exactly. According to Pew Research, 1 in 4 parents living with their child are unmarried. And let's take a look at how many children are currently living with either one parent or no parent.
Welcome back. The UN's nuclear watchdog says a drone attack damaged the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine.
The agency says the drone attack on Sunday killed 1 person in 3 direct hits against the Russia-controlled facility.
The nuclear watchdog said damage to one of the facility's 6 main reactors has not compromised nuclear safety. It called the strike a clear violation of basic principles for protecting Europe's largest plant.
The agency's director general warned of an increased risk of a major nuclear accident. He called for an immediate cease to reckless attacks.
Russian authorities accused Ukraine of using exploding drones in a series of attacks on the plant. Ukraine denied any involvement.
And here in the U.S., crowds gathered in New York City and Washington, D.C. yesterday, demanding the release of hostages still held in Gaza. Here's the story.
The rally in New York City was organized by families of hostages, marking 6 months to the day since they were captured by Hamas. Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett spoke at the rally.
The whole world needs to apply pressure not on Israel, but on Hamas, on Qatar, on the people who are holding them every day.
Congressman Jerry Nadler stressed the need to remember the hostages.
And on the 6-month anniversary, as we remember the heinous crimes committed by Hamas, we must continue to press the life-saving humanitarian aid for the Palestinian people too.
Hostage families spoke out at the rally in Washington, D.C. near the Lincoln Memorial. Both of Ilan Siegel's parents were taken hostage.
So my name is Ilan Siegel. I'm the daughter of Aviva Siegel and Keith Siegel. They both were taken from their house in Kibbutz Kfar Aza on the 7th of October. And my mom, fortunately, came home after 51 days, and my dad is still there.
Ilan's mom, Aviva Siegel, reminded the crowd of what Hamas prisoners may be enduring.
I was tortured, I was threatened, and I was thirsty. I had no human rights. I felt like nothing. But I came back.
Similar rallies were held in Jerusalem, Toronto, London, Amsterdam, and Paris. Hamas is still holding about 130 hostages.
The House of Representatives is set to vote next week on a resolution that would support Israel.
The resolution is non-binding and would not change any current policy. It would support Israel's right to self-defense and oppose a ceasefire in Gaza.
Representative Nancy Pelosi and other congressional Democrats sent a letter to President Biden and Secretary of State Antony Blinken last week. They asked them to withhold weapon transfers to Israel until a full investigation into last week's strikes that killed 7 aid workers is complete. And also, the IDF is preparing for a possible attack by Iran. That's after Tehran vowed revenge after the attack on its Damascus embassy, which killed a senior leader of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. What would that retaliation look like, and what could it mean for the U.S.? We bring in David Wormser, a Middle East affairs analyst at the Center for Security Policy, to discuss. Good morning, David. Good to see you back here on the show. First, so Iran promised severe revenge. Now, what do you think the U.S. and Israel need to be prepared for?
Well, I think they need to be prepared for everything, potentially even a direct missile strike from Iran onto Israel, although I think that's most unlikely. Iran doesn't have a history of risking itself that much. I think Iran risks being exposed as weak if it does that, because the Israelis may shoot down almost or all the missiles. So I doubt it would be a direct attack from Iran. But what I would look for is a wave attack on Israel from its proxies, Hezbollah, from Iran's proxies, Hezbollah, Yemen, the Houthis, and the Iraqi militias, perhaps otherwise. The second possibility is that Iran will refocus or focus even more heavily on trying to topple the Jordanian regime. Jordan is at peace with Israel and it's Israel's neighbor. So Iran has been doing a lot of effort to bring down the Jordanian regime. But I believe that the Iranians are somewhat concerned. They've been presented with essentially an Israeli trap, that the Israelis have the upper hand if it escalates. So I'm a bit concerned by how much the West is tying itself in knots in fear of the Iranian retaliation possibilities.
So quite a bit to unpack here. Can you first, you mentioned the Israeli trap. What do you mean by that?
Well, what it means is that whatever Iran does to respond to Israel, it gives Israel the opportunity to also escalate. And with every escalation, Israel asserts its escalatory dominance. If it's with Hezbollah, it gives Israel the chance to go one step further in slowly tearing apart Hezbollah. If it's more regionally with the proxies, then the Israelis begin a war of degradation and ultimately destruction of Iran's proxies. And if it's Iran itself, not only does Iran have limited potential to hit Israel, because Israel can knock down almost all, if not all, the missiles that Iran sends, but it opens the door for Israel to have a campaign of missiles in addition to aircraft to degrade Iran's military as well as its nuclear program.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, just to summarize really quick, you think that the most likely scenario here is that Iran will still not directly involve, and it's most likely that it will be an attack through its proxies. Yeah, all right. So, but in the very least, all right, so I have heard some analysts say that, Iran at least, in the very least, needs to save face after the attack in Damascus. So how much do you think does that play into that, and how much does that make Iran want to hurt Israel to do that?
Oh, I think that's the key question, Evelyn. They do want to, and they very much need to do something to save face. The internal fissures in Iran are high. You're hearing a lot of Iranians laugh at their regime for having not responded so far, and in general not responded to previous attacks on IRG, or Iranian Revolutionary Guard. So there's a lot of pressure on the Iranian regime, which, again, this is a terror regime. It's a regime that exists internally by terrorizing its population into quiet. And it can't afford, a thug cannot afford to look weak, like his bluff can't be called. So in this case, the Iranians are under massive pressure, but they can't do something that makes them even look weaker. So that's why I think you're absolutely right. They're going to most likely do it through their proxies, but they will do something.
Got it. Well, thank you so much, David Wormser, for your for your insights that are very good as always. I appreciate your time this morning.
Authorities arrested one suspect in connection with a fire at the office of Senator Bernie Sanders in Vermont. Shant Sukhomonian was arrested Sunday. He is charged with arson. The Justice Department says the suspect was recorded on security video spraying a liquid near the door of Sanders' office and then igniting it with a handheld lighter. Sanders was not in the building at the time. The fire was quickly put out by the sprinkler system, but it did cause damage to the door and surrounding areas. The Burlington Fire Department said the floors below were damaged by water. No injuries were reported. The Justice Department said the suspect could face between 5 and 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine.
And some scary moments aboard a Southwest Airlines jet yesterday.
A plane that left Denver's International Airport for Houston had to make an emergency landing back in Denver after an engine cover fell off during takeoff.
The cover struck part of the plane's wing. FlightAware says the plane returned safely to Denver about 35 minutes after it took off.
No one was hurt, thankfully. Passengers were put on a different jet and flown to Houston.
The Federal Aviation Administration is investigating the incident. The FAA is also investigating several other recent engine issues on Southwest's fleet of Boeing planes.
Boeing has come under fire since a door plug panel tore off an Alaska Airlines jet mid-flight back in January. Stay with us. Imagine if the sun went dark in the middle of the day. 31 million Americans will experience just that this afternoon. In a few moments, we'll speak to our on-the-ground reporter who'll be covering it.
With the eagerly anticipated total solar eclipse finally here, will the weather cooperate? What you need to know ahead of the event coming up.
I was born into the wrong body, Mom.
I was astounded by what they were teaching. Child Protective Services did show up at my house. Parents are fearful of losing custody of their children because they say the wrong thing. Risks?
No risks. We got everything covered, I assure you, Mrs. Connors.
They don't want anyone to know the truth.
I can't stay quiet about this anymore. It's destroyed my health.
We're pushed into silence.
Does shopping for bladder control products have you feeling like you need someone to be on the lookout for you? Now you have your privacy back. We're HDIS, and we home deliver bladder control products directly to you. We're always on the lookout for you. You get free shipping in plain, unmarked boxes. So your private matters stay private. We understand how you feel. For over 35 years, we've delivered bladder control products to millions of Americans, just like you. You don't have to worry about incontinence any longer. Call now for your free product sample pack and over $45 in money-saving coupons. At HDIS, we're always in stock. We carry all brands in hundreds of styles and sizes. You'll be sure to get what you need, guaranteed.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog and $45 in money-saving coupons and free product samples, call 800-701-6159. That's 800-701-6159.
Say goodbye to harsh, bitter coffee and hello to a delicious, smooth brew. With specialty quality beans, expertly roasted in-house, you'll taste the difference with every sip. Fermented with a blend of 50 enzymes, Days Coffee delivers a rich brew like no other. Made with the highest grade specialty beans available, you're sure to taste the difference. Elevate your morning with Days Enzyme Fermented Coffee.
I have never seen a production any better than this, anywhere.
Breathtaking. It is absolutely stunning.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
Invigorating. It was encouraging, gave me hope.
This has just been therapy for the soul.
It's a must-see. Must-see.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Coming to Lincoln Center, April 3rd through the 14th. Buy tickets now at shenyun.com.
Got a new house.
A place that I call home.
Good to have you back. The Great American Solar Eclipse will cut clear across the U.S. today. A solar eclipse is when the moon passes in front of the sun, casting a shadow on the Earth.
That's exciting. Millions of Americans are preparing to watch the eclipse.
Yes, and many are expecting traffic jams and some booked out hotels and Airbnbs as well. But we have our own NTD's Chris Beers, who is covering the eclipse from Syracuse, New York. Chris, hi, there you are. Break this long-awaited celestial phenomenon down for us, please.
Hey, Evelyn, good morning. Yeah, I'm here in front of the Milton J. Rubenstein Museum of Science and Technology in Syracuse, New York. I'll be covering the Great American Solar Eclipse all day today. Let me quickly break it down for you. Basically, a solar eclipse is where the moon passes in front of the sun and casts a shadow on the Earth. Now that shadow is moving, and in this case, it'll be moving from the southeast to southwest to the northeast. And that shadow has basically two parts, the outer part and the inner part. The outer part is called the penumbra, and people in that outer part of the shadow will experience this sort of dimming of the sky and the air, this sort of eerie feeling. And if you're in the inner part, the center of the moon's shadow, the umbra, you'll experience almost total darkness, almost instantaneously, sort of like pre-dawn hours, Evelyn.
Wow. Well, sounds definitely like an experience, but also it comes not completely without risks. So tell me about those risks of watching the solar eclipse and how to protect against them.
Yeah, so it's a solar eclipse, right? So it involves the sun, and the moon will pass in front of the sun if you can witness the partial eclipse. And so you'll want to look at the sun to see it. However, it's dangerous to look into the sun. We've been told our whole lives, don't look into the sun, it can hurt your eyes. So if you want to see the partial eclipse, you have to get a special pair of glasses. They're basically these glasses with this thin mylar fabric and material in front of them that's barely translucent. It covers about, it'll keep out about 99.99% of the sun's rays. You can barely see anything when you're wearing them except the sun, which looks sort of like a dull red orb. And if you're using a telescope or binoculars to view the eclipse, be extra careful. You should both wear those special glasses and have a solar eclipse filter on your lens, because the magnified power of the sun can damage your eyes instantaneously, Evelyn.
Very important information right there. And also, don't stare into the sun still. Good points. So, most important question, when and where can we expect to see the eclipse, Chris?
Yeah, so like I was saying, it'll travel, the moon's shadow will travel across the United States from the southwest to the northeast, basically from Texas to Maine. 99% of people in America will get to experience a partial eclipse where some part of the sun is blocked by a bit of the moon. And for 31 million lucky Americans in the path of totality, where the center of the moon's shadow will travel, you will experience near darkness in the middle of the day for about 1 to 4 minutes. It'll be this instantaneous experience. Just time specifics, Dallas, Texas, you have 1:40 p.m. for the total eclipse for that 100% coverage. Little Rock, Arkansas, 1:51. Cleveland, Ohio, 3:13, Buffalo, New York, 3:18, and Burlington, Vermont at 3:26 local time, Evelyn.
Okay, awesome. Now, I know a lot of people will be chasing that path of totality today. So what can they expect to experience as the moon covers the sun completely?
So let me put it this way. I'm told that about 50% of people who experience a total solar eclipse for the first time shed tears. You know, if you're in that path, what you'll experience is a dimming of the air, like I was talking about before, this sort of black, eerie kind of experience in the air, slight dimming. It'll get dimmer and dimmer as the total eclipse approaches. And then moments before, the air will get cool, just like if it was evening or, the dawn time. And then within just a few seconds, it'll go dark as if it's pre-dawn time. You'll be able to take off those solar glasses if you're within that 100% coverage zone, and you'll actually be able to look at the sun directly, and because there won't be any light coming from it, so it won't hurt your eyes. But only do that, I must stress, if you're in the path of totality and it goes dark almost instantaneously like that. And then after that, just a few seconds, it'll go back to that dim lighting, and then you're back to normal daytime. Back to you guys.
Wow. Well, you'll be on the ground in Syracuse, New York, right, covering the total eclipse as it happens. So before you go, just before we let you go, tell us about your coverage for today.
Yes, so the highlight of the day will be at 3:23 Eastern Time here in Syracuse. I will be experiencing the total solar eclipse myself viewers will be able to sort of live vicariously through me if they're not within that path of totality, and maybe get sort of a sense for what it's like to be there. Evelyn.
Exciting. All right, everybody stay tuned for that for sure. Chris Beers, host of NTD's News Today, thank you so much. And Eclipse enthusiasts traveling to Texas to witness the prime totality zone are concerned about bad weather that could ruin their spectacle.
We take a look at how people in Texas and Mexico City prepare.
Today's eclipse totality will last up to 4.5 minutes, depending on where it's viewed. The totality path is a band about 115 miles wide, where the moon completely blocks the sun. Scientists recommend southern Texas and northern Mexico as the best viewing spots. In Mazatlan, Mexico, astronomers are gathering, hopeful for a clear view despite potential clouds.
Even if we have clouds like this, we might miss the outer corona, but with clouds like this, we should still be able to see things like the diamond ring and perhaps the chromosphere and inner corona. So I am cautiously optimistic.
This amateur Belgian astronomer said it took him 4 years to convince his partner to come to Mexico for this eclipse.
Where did they fly from direct? London and Paris, Charles de Gaulle. So we went to Charles de Gaulle, get on the airplane, Mexico City, and then 5-6 days later, here we are in the totality zone. Only thing that can go wrong is the weather. It's like, is it going to be cloudy or not?
Crowds will also descend on locations in Texas. This visitor says it may be his only chance to enjoy such a cosmic event.
What the heck, I'm not going to, the next one is, 20 years from now? I don't know if I'm going to be able to see a total solar eclipse in the United States in 20 years. So, I figure this is the time.
Millions of spectators are expected to show up across North America to view the eclipse. One major concern is today's weather forecast. A large portion of the eclipse viewing area is expected to have cloudy weather, putting a damper on optimum eclipse viewing. Most of the rest of the continent will see a partial eclipse if they aren't located in the path of totality. If you miss it today, there won't be another total solar eclipse spanning the entire U.S. until 2045.
Such a big deal.
Exactly, all this excitement, but also, look at the bright side. If there is, if it's cloudy, it really, from what Chris was telling us, it sounds like it's an experience of all the senses. So, the dimming of the lights, the air that gets cooler, so you'll still experience something.
It's interesting, the bright side of complete darkness.
Yeah,
right.
There you go, yeah.
Well, and NASA points out that the reason why the moon blocks the sun perfectly is cosmic coincidence. The moon is 400 times smaller than the sun, but the sun's 400 times further, so.
Wow, yeah. What are the chances? All right, and if you're nowhere near the path of totality, or if clouds spoil your view, you can still catch this total solar eclipse online.
That's right, NASA will stream the event. The agency is offering several hours of streaming online and on NASA TV starting at 1 p.m. Eastern Time from cities along the totality path.
And of course, our very own Chris Beers will also be following it throughout the day on different shows, so be sure to catch his reports too. We're heading to break now. Coming up, a Brazilian judge has opened an inquiry into Elon Musk after the billionaire said he would restore social media accounts that were banned in the country.
We look at what Musk described as a free speech crackdown in Brazil. And President Biden's re-election campaign raises over $184 million in the first quarter of 2024, almost double what it took in during the previous quarter. A closer look at his fundraising numbers with the host of Business Matters after the break.
The shining gem of New England. This delightful seaside city of Newport is one of the most beautiful places in the state. Today, we bring you here as we meet with our friends and fellow musicians from the Hermitage Piano Trio. As a team, they have garnered multiple Grammy Award nominations with their breathtaking performances.
Oh, wow, I did not think this instrument can make that sound, right?
The pandemic made this reunion even more special.
The three of us, we like it because we
feel music the same way. So
Don't miss us on the next episode of Piano Talks.
Need a ride? Yeah!
Driving with kids is a big responsibility.
Hop in and buckle up!
So don't sweat the small stuff.
You got paint all over our paper!
Get the big stuff right instead.
What does that mean?
Like making sure your kids are in the correct car seat and buckled up for safer travel.
That deserves a wiggly wiggly wig.
To make sure your child is in the right seat for their age and size, visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
The tempting online world is encroaching on our campus. Is unplugging cables and confiscating phones the solution to protect our children? No, we just need a clean multimedia platform. Join Ganjing Campus to leverage premium channel features, professional development courses, and kindness event toolkits tailored for teachers. Build a truly positive and interactive classroom community. Foster a pure and delightful learning environment for children.
Presenting the heritage of traditional Chinese martial arts, fostering martial ethics, and reviving the true tradition. The preliminaries for the 2024 NTD International Traditional Martial Arts Competition will be held across New York, Taiwan, and Germany. The grand finals will be broadcast live online worldwide in August 2024. For more information, please call 1-888-477-9228.
It's a painting that is peaceful. There's a lot of beauty in it. And you forget about whatever you might be worried about.
Welcome back. A Brazil Supreme Court justice opened an inquiry into Elon Musk yesterday.
This comes after Musk said he would reactivate accounts on social media platform X that were blocked in the country.
Musk challenged the decision by Justice Alexandre de Moraes, ordering the blocking of certain accounts. Musk said X would lift all restrictions because they were unconstitutional and called on de Moraes to resign. Musk, X, and Brazilian authorities did not disclose which social media accounts were ordered blocked. De Moraes is investigating so-called digital militias that have been accused of spreading misinformation during the term of former President Jair Bolsonaro. Musk said by blocking certain accounts, de Moraes was betraying the Constitution and the people of Brazil. The justice in response said Musk was waging a public disinformation campaign. In his decision, Moraes said X shall refrain from disobeying any court order already issued, including performing any profile reactivation that has been blocked by the Supreme Court. The justice said if X fails to comply with the order to block certain accounts, the company will be fined the equivalent of nearly $20,000 per day. De Moraes also opened an investigation to look into whether Musk engaged in an obstruction of justice. President Luiz de Silva's leftist government expressed support for de Moraes. In a social media post, Brazil's Solicitor General said we cannot live in a society where billionaires abroad have control of social media networks and violate the rule of law. Earlier, Musk said principles matter more than profit. He also made several posts on X urging Brazilian users to download a VPN to bypass government restrictions.
And we have now with us NTD's Business Matters host Don Ma to give us the latest updates from the financial world.
Don, let's talk campaign finance.
Yes, so U.S. President Joe Biden announced Saturday that it raised a ton of money apparently, so $187 million in the first quarter of 2024. So this is nearly double the amount compared to the previous quarter. And a few more facts for you here. In March alone, the campaign raised more than $90 million. This is more than the amount last time, which is $40 million more. And by the way, the campaign is the highest total cash on hand by any Democratic candidate in history. This is according to what the Biden campaign has said. And moreover, it appears that President Biden's campaign has been pulling in more money than that of his Republican rival, former President Donald Trump. Yeah.
Right. Certainly no secret there that Biden was ahead with that from Trump. So how did Biden's campaign raise that money, though?
Yeah, so apparently there were a number of ways that he raised this money, and let me just point out a couple of them here. So in March, former President Obama and Bill Clinton joined Biden in a New York City fundraiser that raised more than $25 million. And the campaign says the funds announced Saturday actually came in through all fundraising streams, which in the past have included Biden's campaign, the Democratic National Committee, and joint fundraising committees. Now, in the first quarter, 96% of donations were under $200, with donors making nearly 2 million contributions.
Yeah, and that money's got to go somewhere. If you remember back last month, Biden's team was pushing that $30 million ad that was targeting these Black, Asian, and Hispanic voters. Let's talk about Trump. How is his company on Wall Street doing?
Well, shares of Truth Social owner Trump Media Technology and Group tumbled 12% on Friday. And with that, it sank to its lowest level since the company went public a couple of weeks ago. Trump Media shares surged as high as $79 on the day trading began. But since then, the Truth Social owner share price plunged by about 49% to a closing price of $40 on Friday. But, let's take a step back here and take a look at the bigger picture. Trump Media shares still spiked more than 130% this year so far, despite those recent losses. So Trump's personal stake in the company is still valued over $3 billion, which is still quite a lot.
And some experts still, they expect that this is going to be quite a volatile stock. So let's see where that takes us. But besides that, someone really lucky won the Powerball jackpot over the weekend, right?
Yeah, to say the least, very lucky, of course. So the ticket was sold in Oregon, and it won the Powerball jackpot of more than $1.3 billion. That, which by the way, is the 8th largest in U.S. history. The winner matched the correct numbers on a $2 ticket. Pretty good investment, if you ask me.
High ROI.
Exactly. It's pretty good. But don't think any one of us here can replicate that, because it's quite the luck that he had to win this. Because as the prizes grow and the drawings attract more ticket sales, and the jackpots then become harder to hit, so the chances of actually the person winning the jackpot are 1 in 292 million. The price is also subject to federal taxes, though, so at around $1.3 billion. It can be taken as a lump sum of around $600 million, and the other option is an initial payment followed by 29 annual payments. And the Powerball tickets are sold in 45 states, including the District of Columbia on top of that, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and in Puerto Rico.
But still, how great that this guy got so lucky. What are the odds? Well, we just heard, but congratulations, definitely. Thank you, Don Ma, host of NTD's Business Matters.
Thank you.
Yes. And stay with us. The European Space Agency is planning a 2-satellite launch for a new project. It hopes to create the first ever man-made solar eclipses. Find out why in just a minute.
When I drink it, the first thing was I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel, actually, an effect. And I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times. And so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then a second time, I tried it really like on an empty stomach, and just 2 teaspoons of it, and over a few times. And wow, that was a big difference, because suddenly I could feel, wow, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours, and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
The Chinese Communist Party is exposing its hand. The fingerprints can be found all over. and I recently caught wind of these CCP operations on full display in South Korea. The top 13 theaters all rejected Shenyun almost simultaneously. What makes the case in South Korea so different? And how does the CCP extend its influence into other countries? Now, for the Chinese Communist Party, this is warfare. War being waged here isn't being done through tanks and bombs, but instead through the invisible forces of culture and ideology. They also revealed a hidden war.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Thanks for staying with us. The European Space Agency is preparing 2 satellites for launch to help scientists study the sun.
Proba 3 should accomplish something previously thought impossible, casting a precise shadow from one spacecraft to another in a man-made eclipse.
The European Space Agency, or ESA office in Brussels, is planning a mission dubbed Proba 3. The aim is to get a continuous view of the sun's corona, which is the outermost layer of the sun's atmosphere. Researcher Andrei Zhukov explains what scientists hope to learn.
This will help us to understand a number of things, like the origin of the solar wind. There are still some unanswered questions, in particular the ones which concern the slow wind. The slow wind is the one which is variable, the one which is all the time evolving, not homogeneous, not uniform. So there it's still not clear where it comes from.
The study of the sun includes learning how certain solar phenomena affect life on Earth.
The data from Proba 3 is going to provide key information and new knowledge on the sun's corona, and also phenomena like coronal mass ejections as they form and they move out into interplanetary space. These are some of the key phenomena that form part of what we call space weather. And so space weather, coronal mass ejections have the possibility to impact our life and activities here on Earth.
If things go as planned, the satellites will be launched from India in September. If successful, one satellite will cast a shadow onto the other, creating the first ever man-made eclipse. The 2 satellites will be launched into space together, then at the right time they will split up.
So we will send a command and we will actually separate the stack. They will separate and then they will go into a safe orbit pretty far away from each other so that we make sure they don't bump into each other.
The 2 spacecraft will maintain a precise formation down to a few millimeters. One craft will fly closer to the sun, lining up with it to block the blinding light, the same way the moon creates a shadow over the Earth's surface during an eclipse. Once the sun's light is hidden, only the corona remains visible. The other satellite will photograph the inner part of the corona region and study its features. The ESA hopes studying the solar corona will help scientists predict solar weather, like solar storms affecting satellites in orbit, and communication networks and power grids on Earth.
Wow, how far technology has come. Nothing is impossible.
Rocket science at its finest. And you know, according to space.com, they're hoping to get like 10 hours of eclipse instead of just a few minutes on Earth.
Wow,
yeah.
That's a long time to block out the sunlight.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we are heading into the second part of our broadcast now. We'll be back in just a minute. Stay tuned for more.
NTD News, the fastest growing independent news source in America, bringing you breaking news from around the world. Expert analysis, investigative reporting, and original award-winning documentaries. We're known for our uncensored China coverage you won't find anywhere else. We cover the stories that affect you and shape our world without the political noise. We report from the heart with you in mind. Watch us right here on NTD News.
Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. The eagerly anticipated total solar eclipse is finally here. What you need to know ahead of the event, and how one Texas town transformed into a solar eclipse hotspot.
Former President Trump's campaign says it raised $50 million at an event over the weekend. More on the private Florida fundraiser and President Biden's reaction.
Israel withdraws a large portion of its troops from Gaza as the war reaches 6 months. But the fighting is far from over. Officials say an assault on the southern Rafah region is imminent.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warns China to change its industrial policy threatening U.S. jobs, and raises concerns about Chinese companies supporting Russia's war in Ukraine.
Boeing again comes under scrutiny as yet another plane experiences a frightening incident. What went wrong, and a new investigation by aviation authorities.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Today is Monday, April 8th. Today's top news. Former President Trump's campaign says it raised over $50 million at a fundraiser in Florida over the weekend. That almost doubles what the Biden campaign recently said it raised at a high-profile event in New York City.
Some of the GOP's biggest donors rallied behind Trump during a private dinner at billionaire John Paulson's home. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the fundraiser.
Former President Trump, outside a private fundraiser Saturday, predicted a spectacular evening and said people just want change.
Your country is really doing poorly. We're a laughing stock all over the world, and we're going to get that change very quickly.
The closed-door dinner at the home of billionaire investor John Paulson hosted around 120 high-profile guests, including hedge fund billionaire Robert Mercer, energy executive Harold Hamm, and casino mogul Steve Wynn. A Trump campaign official said Trump spoke for 45 minutes about goals for a second term, including securing the border, reducing inflation, unleashing energy production, and extending 2017 tax cuts. Trump's surrogates speaking included Vivek Ramaswamy, along with Senators Doug Burgum and Tim Scott. Trump asked guests to donate up to $800,000 to his campaign. President Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders reacted on X, saying they plan to ask Trump's, quote, good buddies to pay their fair share.
This is his economic plan? That's what he wants to do? Cutting taxes for his friends? Cutting Social Security for you? That makes me mad as hell, quite frankly.
The hypocrisy is just outrageous.
Campaign figures show Biden's campaign had over $190 million cash to start the month, double what Trump had on hand. Trump is holding another high-profile fundraiser in Atlanta, Georgia on Wednesday. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
What strategies are President Biden and former President Trump employing right now, and how will their fundraising efforts affect their campaigns? Let's get some answers from Jeff Career, a political analyst and TV radio host. Jeff, let's start with an overview. What are Biden and Trump's strategies right now heading into the general election?
Well, hey, Kevin, thanks for having me. I think their strategies are similar in that they're both raising money. They're both raising big money. Biden raised $26 million with Clinton and Obama. And then we just talked about Trump's big fundraiser, over $50 million. And what's interesting, Kevin, is that Trump raised all that money alone. It took Obama and Clinton to help Biden raise those kind of funds. I will admit Biden is ahead as far as the fundraising. The DNC is ahead of the RNC. The RNC needs to catch up. So that gives the Democrats an advantage, but they're going to be raising money big time. Biden has the advantage, though, Kevin, in that he doesn't have to deal with all these legal issues that Trump has.
Oh, absolutely, Jeff. And we saw Trump, his apparent record-setting fundraiser, $50 million that he pulled in over the weekend, almost doubling that of Biden's star-studded event in the Big Apple. How will this change the dynamics of the campaigns on both sides?
Well, both sides are now consolidating. You've got the Democrats. There was talk a few weeks ago about maybe Michelle Obama, maybe someone else coming in. I think pretty much everyone has come to the realization it's Biden. So they're coming together. Same thing with the Republicans. This big fundraiser for Trump shows me that we've got a push toward unity in the RNC, and also now with the Trump signature on the RNC headquarters now with his daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, and his key ally, his RNC chair. So he's consolidating support among the Republicans. So both sides are doing that as they're heading toward their conventions and heading toward the sprint to the finish. The X factor, of course, Kevin, is RFK Jr., the other third-party candidates. How many ballots are they going to be on? How much damage they're going to be able to do to the candidates. Right now, it looks like they're going to be impacting Biden more than Trump.
Yeah, that's right, Jeff. And Trump's got some family there heading the RNC. And that was former Presidents Bill Clinton and Barack Obama that turned out in New York City for Biden. Biden announced in March that he pulled in over $90 million. Does this give an advantage, especially since what you were saying, that Trump has those legal fees that he's saddled with?
No doubt. He's got an advantage with the fundraising, and that was the advantage in 2016 and 2020 for the Democrats as well. And don't forget, he's got the advantage in that he's got the media, most of the media behind him. He's got most of big tech behind him. So he's got Hollywood and the special interests. So he's got a lot of other assets that help the Democrats in any election, that Donald Trump has to overcome. So it's Trump's connection with the people, with the grassroots, with the average working man and woman that's going to have to prevail over Biden's better connection with elites and power brokers. And we'll see how it's going to go. The good thing about Trump is he's got a lot of earned media. He's well known. He's the most recognized figure on the planet. So he can get attention no matter what he does. But with the media coverage, a lot of it's negative.
Great having your input today. Jeff Career, political analyst and TV radio host.
Thanks, Kevin.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warned the Chinese regime today the U.S. will not accept new industries being wiped out by Chinese imports.
Yellen just finished 4 days of meetings in China, urging Beijing to cut manufacturing over capacity.
Yellen says China has ramped up production capacity far beyond the domestic demand.
She says cheap Chinese exports threaten jobs in the U.S., comparing it to low-cost Chinese steel flooding the global market in the past. She says U.S. concerns are shared by European allies, along with countries like Japan, Mexico, and the Philippines.
Yellen also says she made it clear that President Biden will not accept a reality like that again. Treasury officials said Yellen did not threaten tariffs or other specific measures against Chinese imports.
The Treasury Secretary says she had difficult conversations about national security. She warned any banks that facilitate the sale of military or dual-use goods to Russia for war could face U.S. sanctions.
And 6 months to the day that the terrorist group Hamas launched a deadly attack on Israel, the Israeli government said they were withdrawing some of their troops from Gaza.
As the war enters a new phase, we take a look at events on the ground.
After months of fighting, Israel's military said Sunday it's pulling forces from the city of Khan Yunis. The IDF says its 98th Division concluded its mission and was leaving Gaza to recuperate and prepare for future operations. Israel confirmed one division will remain in Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel confirmed it was sending a delegation to Egypt to discuss the future of the war. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu stating he would not cave to international pressure.
I made it clear to the international community there will be no ceasefire without the return of hostages. It just won't happen.
Israel says around 130 hostages are still held in Gaza. The army says they will have to enter the Rafah area along the border with Egypt to eliminate Hamas once and for all. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant confirmed that a Rafah mission is in the pipeline. Over 1 million people are currently sheltering in Rafah. Foreign powers have raised concerns about the humanitarian consequences of an attack there. Israel says it will evacuate civilians before launching an incursion. On another front, Israeli military says it's preparing to move from defense to attack on the border with Lebanon. The IDF and Lebanese terrorist group Hezbollah have been exchanging fire since the start of the Israel-Hamas war, with casualties reported on both sides.
The United States is preparing for a significant Iranian attack on U.S. or Israeli assets in the region as soon as this week. That's according to an unnamed senior official with the Biden administration. The threat comes after an Israeli strike in Syria killed Iranian commanders last week. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that and an exclusive interview by America's Hope host Kelly Wright, who sat down with former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren.
A senior Biden administration official says they believe an attack by Iran is inevitable. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said Sunday the U.S. is prepared to respond swiftly if necessary against any attacks by Iran or its proxies.
I know the president and his team are working hard to prevent escalation and are prepared to defend any attack and respond swiftly if necessary.
Former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren, says Israel is facing multiple potentially existential threats. One such threat, according to Oren, is Hezbollah in the north, backed by Iran, which he says has between 150 and 170,000 rockets.
And the Israeli estimate for the rocket fire daily that we would be receiving from Hezbollah is between 2,000 and 6,000 rockets a day, which is just really, truly inconceivable.
Other threats, he says, include Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria, the Houthi terrorists in Yemen, and Iran itself. Oren warns against underestimating what is at stake in Israel's war against Hamas.
Evil is a force in the world, that whether you call it Satan, the devil, it doesn't matter. Evil exists in the world, and we saw it in full display on October 7th, because that was truly an evil. And we are up against that evil. And I'll put a finer point on it. If we don't succeed in this war, if we do not defeat that evil, other countries and other societies are next.
The war between Israel and Hamas has now reached the 6-month mark. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Authorities arrested one suspect in connection with a fire at the office of Senator Bernie Sanders in Vermont. Shant Sagamonian was arrested Sunday. He's charged with arson. The Justice Department says the suspect was recorded on security video spraying a liquid near the door of Sanders' office and then igniting it with a handheld lighter. Sanders was not in the building at the time. The fire was quickly put out by the sprinkler system, but it did cause damage to the door and surrounding areas. The Burlington Fire Department said the floors below were damaged by water. No injuries were reported. The Justice Department said the suspect could face between 5 and 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine.
And some scary moments aboard a Southwest Airlines jet yesterday.
A plane that left Denver's International Airport for Houston had to make an emergency landing back in Denver after an engine cover fell off during takeoff.
The cover struck part of the plane's wing. FlightAware says the plane returned safely to Denver about 35 minutes after it took off. No one was hurt.
Passengers were put on a different jet and flown to Houston.
The Federal Aviation Administration is investigating the incident. The FAA is also investigating several other recent engine issues on Southwest's fleet of Boeing planes.
Boeing has come under fire since a door plug panel tore off an Alaska Airlines jet mid-flight back in January.
Coming up, a man longing for the return of his brother. A woman abducted to Gaza with her 4-year-old and a baby. NTD's Kelly Wright was in Israel to hear from those grieving with 6 months gone by since the Hamas terror attack.
The eagerly anticipated total solar eclipse is finally here. What you need to know ahead of the event and how one Texas town transformed into a solar eclipse hotspot.
Can't believe you're doing this alone.
I've done it before.
I remember. You threw your back out. How you holding up?
Hand me that board.
Nothing wrong with getting help.
I'm good.
I did it when Felicia left.
I'll figure it out.
I know you will, but you don't have to do it alone. That's all I'm saying.
If I promise to look into it, will you drop it and help me build this fence?
Now you need my help.
It can be a real pain sometimes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach.
I went to Dr. Benatti and he went ahead and looked at my pictures. He told me, you have pain here, you have pain here. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'd been to others, but he was a doctor that didn't want to fillet my back open like a fish and do like open spine surgery because everybody else wanted to do that and I was not having it. The anesthesiologist who was working with me, I was like having a conversation with this guy, and then I was watching on the monitor as Dr. Benatti is fixing my back. I really felt like I was in good hands.
Visit askbenatti.com.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The wolves surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
She's in quite a perilous situation, but she's completely strong and serene, and she's actually meditating. It was very, very well liked because no matter what culture or what sort of walk of life you're from, I think people, they see it and they immediately understand what that energy, what that message is, and they're drawn to it because everybody kind of needs a little bit of that in their own life, of, you know, the steadfast calmness and something to hold on to. It's definitely an inner peace in the midst of something very chaotic, and for a lot of people right now, the whole world is very, very chaotic. So I guess that's another reason why so many people are very drawn to this.
These are all farmers, maybe
no,
not this
not
one.
A farm anymore.
But here's a farm, right?
No, there's also not a farm anymore.
All these people shut down because of the government policies?
Yeah.
The government wants to control the food, so we don't eat meat, but we eat insect.
As the price of staples goes through the roof, people will say, I can't afford a steak anymore, so all right, I'll eat your stupid crickets.
Welcome back. It's been 6 months since the Hamas terror group unleashed a brutal attack on Israeli soil.
NTD's Kelly Wright, host of America's Hope, was recently in Israel talking to the family members of hostages and to others to hear how they're coping. NTD's Daniel Monahan has a report.
Michael Levy's brother Or is being held hostage in Gaza. Or's wife was confirmed dead.
My brother is an innocent civilian. He lost his wife who was murdered in front of his eyes. He have a 2.5-year-old boy who's waiting for him at home. And his story is the same of 133 other stories of hostages.
The couple arrived at the Nova Music Festival shortly before Hamas terrorists carried out the massacre. Levy says at the end of the day, it's a human story.
It's not about Israel versus Palestinians. My brothers and his wife only crime was that they wanted to celebrate peace and love in a music festival. They didn't hate anyone. They want to live in peace with the Palestinians. But they were brutally attacked by monsters.
Levy says the terrorists will strike again if the world won't wake up. Maybe in Paris, perhaps in New York or London.
His face is a human being with a family and hopes and dreams, and a little boy who is waiting for his father to come back.
Levy discusses his 2-year-old nephew, who is now without a mom.
What can I say? I mean, the day we had to tell him that his mom won't come back, it was the hardest day of our lives. I mean, how can you tell a two-year-old boy that he won't get a hug from his mother?
Jimmy Miller's cousin, Shiri Bibas, and her 2 kids, Ariel and Kafir, 4 years old and 1-year-old, were taken hostage by Hamas from kibbutz Nir Oz. Shiri's husband and the father of the 2 boys was also taken hostage.
They are not the enemies of the Hamas, and the Hamas took them over there to Gaza, and we don't know what's the situation of them. We don't know nothing about them. It's a very difficult situation.
Miller hopes all the hostages will be reunited with their families soon.
Because if we don't gonna have a good future with our families, nobody, even in Gaza, don't gonna have any kind of future over there in this territory.
NTD's Kelly Wright has been talking to hostage families, rabbis and pastors, Jewish and Arab people to hear their tragic stories and try to find a path toward healing. The America's Hope host will have a special report on what he learned coming out in just a few weeks. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
So great that Kelly's bringing out their stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the IDF said Friday that still 134 hostages are in Gaza, and we don't even know if they're still alive. So a lot of heartbreak, or how many are still alive. A lot of heartbreak.
Yeah, and on that note, the IDF said they recovered the body of a hostage on Saturday. Just really sad stuff here. We're talking about, I mean, he was 47 years old, and his mother was also a hostage. She was released back in November during a temporary ceasefire, and that was one of the most hardest hit places during the October 7th attack.
Right, so of course we have seen tens of thousands of people out there in Israel demanding a hostage deal, but like I said, it's just a lot of heartbreak out there, and we're definitely keeping the victims in mind this week, but also we have some more happy news to get to.
Yeah, that's right. The Great American Solar Eclipse will cut clear across the U.S. today. A solar eclipse is when the moon passes in front of the sun, casting a shadow on the Earth.
I spoke to NTD's Chris Beers earlier, who is covering the eclipse from Syracuse, New York. Take a look.
I'm here in front of the Milton J. Rubenstein Museum of Science and Technology in Syracuse, New York. I'll be covering the Great American Solar Eclipse all day today. Let me quickly break it down for you. Basically, a solar eclipse is where the moon passes in front of the sun and casts a shadow on the Earth. And that shadow is moving, and in this case, it'll be moving from the southeast to southwest to the northeast. And that shadow has basically two parts, the outer part and the inner part. The outer part is called the penumbra, and people in that outer part of the shadow will experience this sort of dimming of the sky and the air, this sort of eerie feeling. And if you're in the inner part, the center of the moon's shadow, the umbra, you'll experience almost total darkness, almost instantaneously, sort of like pre-dawn hours, Evelyn.
Wow. Well, sounds definitely like an experience, but also it comes not completely without risks. So tell me about those risks of watching the solar eclipse and how to protect against them.
If you want to see the partial eclipse, you have to get a special pair of glasses. They're basically these glasses with this thin mylar fabric and material in front of them that's barely translucent. It covers about, it'll keep out about 99.99% of the sun's rays. You can barely see anything when you're wearing them except the sun, which looks sort of like a dull red orb. And if you're using a telescope or binoculars to view the eclipse, be extra careful. You should both wear those special glasses and have a solar eclipse filter on your lens, because the magnified power of the sun can damage your eyes instantaneously. The highlight of the day will be at 3:23 Eastern Time here in Syracuse. I will be experiencing the total solar eclipse myself. Viewers will be able to sort of live vicariously through me if they're not within that path of totality, and maybe get sort of a sense for what it's like to be there, Evelyn.
Exciting. All right, everybody stay tuned for that for sure. Chris Beers, host of NTD's News Today, thank you so much. How great that we have Chris on the ground.
Yeah, that's right. And it's a great opportunity for some celestial photography. But as Chris was alluding to, you got to put that solar filter on the camera. It's not enough just to wear those glasses.
Definitely be careful when you look through lenses.
Yeah.
And also, one Texas town is about to transform into a solar eclipse hotspot.
Bandera, Texas is in the middle of the path of totality. And with millions of people about to hit the road to see the eclipse for themselves, the town is expected to see a massive population boom.
Welcome to Bandera, you guys.
It's the cowboy capital of the world.
Lots of Western bands and good dancing.
Bandera, Texas is in the path of totality for Monday's solar eclipse. The town is expected to experience more than 4 minutes of darkness.
Rosa, I know you're over there, but I can't see you.
I can't see you.
Eclipse mania has taken hold of Bandera. Horses and dinosaurs are donning eclipse glasses, even eyewear for a giant cowboy.
One monster eclipse party.
We are downtown Bandera, Texas. Behind us here is the courthouse.
Bandera's population of under 1,000
Everybody knows everybody. Hi, Eileen.
is expected to quadruple Monday, says the mayor. At 11th Street Cowboy Bar, the meet,
Medium rare.
and greet is about the eclipse. Millions are expected to flock to Texas and more than a dozen U.S. states in the celestial path of totality. Some officials are worried about traffic jams. In Bandera, cowgirls solved that problem.
I'm going to jump on Rooster, and I'm going to ride by everybody, and I'll do my little princess wave even.
Eclipse mania expected to add $6 billion to the U.S. economy in one estimate. Texas's slice of the astronomical pie, $1.4 billion. The Eclipse merchandise in Bandera,
They sold like that.
is practically sold out. So are venues like the historic Dixie Dude Ranch.
Our first reservation for the Eclipse was in 2017. I think we sold out completely about 4 years ago.
What never runs out here are the good people
And a moon pie.
Moon pie?
It's the eclipse, don't you know?
For the eclipse. Thank you.
and the good times.
Just make sure those horses have those solar glasses.
All right. Don't look. Yeah, somebody needs to take care of them too. But you know how great. A lot of people are traveling, chasing that, and it looks like they have, that town especially has a lot in store for them. So no disappointments today.
Quadrupling their population. That's really great. It's got to be good for the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
And you know, horses exhibit some strange behavior during those eclipses, such as kind of going silent and being extra vigilant.
Oh, very interesting.
According to Syracuse University.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good to know that. So take care of them for sure. Also, we have to wrap up our show at this point, but be sure to stay tuned for NTD's News Today broadcast at 10 a.m. Eastern Time coming up.
That's right. Starting today, NTD News Today will start an hour earlier.
And for round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Imagine a coffee that cares for